All right. How is everybody doing? Hello, internets. This is the Pixelogic live streaming, and this is the second episode of this series. So we did a series before, which you can watch on Zbrush Live or Facebook or Twitch. We record these, and you can watch the past ones. And in the first series, we made a kind of a robot and a humanoid robot, and in this series, we're making a spinner from Blade Runner. So that's what today is going to be all about. Actually, all 8 episodes are going to be about it. So we did the first episode a couple of weeks ago, and now this is going to continue on from where we left off. And so if everybody can hear me okay, it looks like somebody on YouTube is already chatting. So Raphael, are you hearing everything okay? And if everybody from Twitch, or somebody from Twitch and somebody from Facebook can chime in and say if they are hearing me okay, then we can get started. I think there's a little bit of a delay on some of these services, so there's a bunch of people on, it looks like, so I don't know. Okay, so Raphael, you hear me good on YouTube. That's great. If somebody from Twitch and somebody from Facebook can chime in, we can get going. All right, thank you, Isyantos from Twitch, and one more person from Facebook, and we're good to go. So we've got about 50 so people on. I think Facebook has a little bit of a delay, so all right. Hi, Dave. How are you? All right, I guess we'll kind of go ahead and get started. If somebody from Facebook can chime in, that's great. Then we know that everybody is online. Okay, so if you remember from last time, what we did is we just kind of did some rough concepts just to get a good primary shape, and we came up with 8 different models. So I'll go ahead and unhide all of them, and go ahead and use expose here to show you what these models look like. So all of them have that same. I guess I can hide this one. We don't need to see it yet. All of them have one characteristic thing that I wanted to do just as a respect to the Blade Runner kind of lore, and that is this kind of front part that has the 2 tires. So this is from Sid Mead's concept, and they continued it in the second one as well. So it seems to be kind of a defining form for the spinner. So we are going to continue to do that. But everything else is kind of up for grabs, and we came up with a bunch of different concepts here, and what we're going to do. Hey, Jay from all right, so there's somebody from Facebook as well, so we can hear. How's it going, Jay? Jay was one of my students, so it's great to have her on. Okay, so here you can see that I've got these 4 designs, and by the way, this thing that I did here is use the expose function. So all these cars are basically modeled in the center of the screen of the coordinate system, right? So each one of these I worked on individually, but then what I do is I have all of them as subtools, and then when I click the expose button, it separates them out, and that's kind of how I can see multiple objects that I'm working on at the same time. So here I've got about, they're a little bit different. There are some characteristic features, like this one has this back tire feature. So they're a little bit different than each other, but they're all basically spinner cars. So we have to determine at this point, at the start of today, which one of these is going to be the one we're going to choose. So we have to narrow it down. So the way to do that is I'm just going to go ahead and bring them back to the center, and then go ahead and turn solo on so I can just see one at a time. So here's the first one that we did, and this one was kind of started off from an Aston Martin model, and we kind of used some of the shapes from that. And there are some interesting design design language going on here with the shapes. So I think this is definitely one of the winners. Then there's this one, and I kind of like this one, but I like this part of it right here. So I might use this top part of this car with some of the other ones, and then there's this one, which looks okay. It has some interesting aspects to it. It's funny, when you see them together, they look very similar, but as you start looking at them individually, they're actually really different. This one is too kind of horizontal and vertical, so I think I'm not going to use this one, so we'll go ahead and hide that one. And then this one is kind of interesting, but kind of looks like a Porsche 911, has that kind of a shape over here. So we'll forego that one as well. Let's go ahead and keep going down the list here. There's this one, which kind of looks like more of a kind of a longer sedan type spinner. So I think I'm going to forego this one as well. And then there's this one, which I did a little bit more work on, just kind of trying to figure out some cut lines and some features. And I think this one is kind of one of the winners as well. So let's see what we're left with. We are left with another about 4 cars right now, and so we have to decide what to eliminate. So I kind of like this one a bit. Maybe this one we can eliminate. So let me do that. Go over to it. I think it's this one. And we can hide that one. Actually, let's go ahead and do this first. Make sure it's the correct one. Yeah, I think we're going to hide this one. It's very similar to the last one, so I think we can safely not do that one. So now we're down to 3. And when we design, when I work with companies, or I work with art directors and such, this is kind of a process we go through. Usually, if they don't know 3D, I give them orthos of these, and they can decide that way, or sometimes they sit next to me, or on Skype they kind of go through and figure out which ones they like. So I think these two are really strong, the two on the side, but I still kind of like this top part of this one. So I'm going to try and see if I can incorporate this top part of this specific spinner. I can incorporate that into maybe perhaps some of the other two that I like. Yeah, I like this part a lot of this one, but I don't know. I mean, this is pretty common, and then I don't know if I really like these two oval-shaped backs that I made for that one. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and keep that first one, this one, as is, and all the other ones that we don't like, what I'm going to do is put them in a folder, and say second choice. And what's nice about these is I keep them, and then if I get another commission or another thing that needs a similar object, then I have them ready to go. And if I don't, maybe someday I'll go ahead and work on them. But for now, I think the two that I picked over here are going to be. So let me just bring this back in. I think these two are going to be the winners. And let's put this one out too. So the new folder system in Zbrush is just really super, super helpful, and makes life a lot easier. That way you can just group things and put them away. So here I'm kind of going to use this top part of this one, and I have to maybe erase some of the parts of the other ones. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use the trim curve option, and symmetry is on, and I should be on I need to be on this car right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and eliminate these back parts. I don't want them. So let's see what happened there. Oh, think what happened was I kept this car in here, so I need to bring it back out. A quick organizational change here. All right, so now what I want to do is I want to hide these ones. We don't care about them anymore. And we're going to go ahead and do what I did earlier. Maybe that's a bit too much. And I want to make sure I'm doing the left side so I can mirror and weld it. All right, so we don't want that. And we don't actually want this whole back part right here. Like so. And then I'm just going to go ahead and load my UI here. Just do it this way, config, restore, custom UI, and I'm just going to mirror and weld this, and then I don't want this back part either. Actually, let's leave that for now. And then I'm not going to use this part from this car either. I'm just going to use that top part, again, mirror and weld, get that symmetry going, and see if I like how this part is looking on this design that I had. And as a matter of fact, it kind of looks nice. I like the kind of the angular look that it has. So I think it might be a keeper, but I still need to get rid of some of these parts that I don't want. Like so. All right, so, and then let's just go ahead and go into the clay tubes brush. And I've got symmetry on. Let's turn sculptress mode on, and let's start kind of, you know, getting rid of some of these parts we don't want. And we can turn transparency on to kind of see what we have underneath, right? So looks like there's this whole front part we don't need. And sculptress mode is really good to get rid of stuff, so you can just kind of pick a bigger brush and just get rid of parts like that. And so I have to decide whether I like the initial shape or this one. This is pretty common, so I think I'm going to try and see if I can clip this a little bit more this way. Right. Mirror that and mirror and weld it. All right, so I did shave. Yes, I shaved once in the summer, and then I grow my beard back. Cow holy. I shaved last time too. I guess nobody noticed it. All right, so here we're just, or maybe they did, I don't remember. Anyway, so here I'm kind of just trying to push and pull that initial shape out. Eventually I'm going to combine these two, so I'm trying to kind of find a, wow, that really messed up my A-line. So I kind of have to redo that. So I'm kind of, you know, I guess this is cool. Bring it down a bit, get that front part of the car. Like so. And this back part, kind of get it back into shape. So now I'm just basically using sculptress mode and trying to get some of that initial shape in here, see if it's going to work for me. And I'll probably decide pretty soon here whether or not it's going to do it or not. At this moment, I'm kind of thinking maybe not, but maybe some interesting form will pop out, and I'll decide otherwise. All right, let's turn transparency off, see what that looks like. I think I kind of lost what I had before, so I'm just basically going to go all the way back to the way this car was, and I'm going to add it to the second choice batch. And I think we're going to go with this one. All right, so we're going to go with this shape, and this is going to be the car we're going to use. All right, so at this point, I got to start figuring out some other aspects of this. So every car, of course, has an interior. So we have to figure out where the interior is of this car and what happens in it. So what I've done is, I think I talked about this a little bit last time, where I basically went to Gravity Sketch in VR. And Gravity Sketch has this kind of interior of a car that comes with it. So in Gravity Sketch, you basically draw these kind of arcs in 3D space, and then you use VR to position them. And I thought this looked pretty cool as an interior. I mean, it's just basically thin, and I'll zoom in so you can see and turn on polyframe. So it's basically just thin tubes that are kind of put together, and they basically create this kind of sketch of an interior. And this is very similar to how car designers do interiors. They basically draw some curves, and they position them. They usually, initially they did that with tape on walls to kind of get the curvature they wanted, and then I think they started using Alias to do these things, and then now a lot of car designers and such are using Gravity Sketch. So I think I'm going to use this interior and put it in the car. So I'm going to move this second choice thing down here. So we have our car and we have our interior. Let's go ahead and turn transparency on and see how that interior will fit into this car. Right, so this is where the people would sit. And as a matter of fact, I actually went out and purchased a driver from 1024. So 1024 is a company that sells scans of humans, and they had a driver in there. So I went ahead and got them. And we're just going to use these two for now. Eventually, I might put in different drivers, but for now, I'm going to use this. There's also a guy standing up, so we'll kind of put these in the scene with the car in the final composition. So here, let's see, there's two different versions of these, and I think one of them is less. I think are they the same? They are. Okay, so I'm just going to copy one of these and paste it into my scene. Over here, is this the right one? Or no, this is the right one. Okay, and I'm just going to paste it in here as the two drivers, and you can see the scale, of course, is totally messed up. So I think this is to scale. So what I'll do is I'll scale up my car to match the driver. Right, so I'm going to make the car bigger so that the drivers kind of sit inside the car. And doing this kind of thing is really important because you get to make things kind of fit the natural world. And if this is going to be in a movie, they're going to have actors and actresses sit in the cars, so it's always a good idea to kind of make these things to scale and also position them where they would be. Let me make sure I turn symmetry off here and make sure that this is in the center. And the car is centered as well. I guess the drivers are not centered. So let's go ahead and do that. Put this in the center of the drivers and have them be centered. And yeah, so now we're kind of working in the same area. All right, so let's go back to the car here and make it a little bit bigger. A little bit more. I think this is about where the drivers would be in the car. So that looks okay. And usually the head of the driver should be where the highest point of the car is. So if I move this forward a bit, so now I can kind of see that this is going to work. Right, so now let's go ahead and see what we can do with that seating thing and see if we can get the guys to sit in that chair. So here I'm just going to hide the car for now and just work with these seats. And you can see that these seats are more reclined, a lot more reclined than my drivers are, but that's fine. I can just kind of build this type of seat setting and put the drivers in it. So this is pretty inclined. The driver is going to be laying down quite a bit to be sitting in this. And let's see now what happens when we bring the car back. It looks like this part is kind of coming out, but that's fine. But that looks like I have a good kind of a interior setting right now for the car as well. So this is kind of what it's going to be like. And I guess, let me just duplicate this. And I can try to see what I can do with the seats here. I just mask that one part, and I'll see if I can bring these seats up I guess I need to mask this part too, and then just bring the seed up like so. See if I can have it be, yeah, something like that. That looks good. I mean, I've got some streaks here and weird things going on, but this is just a placeholder. I'm just going to use this as a placeholder to kind of do the... Another thing I do here is I'm going to start a folder as well that I can put, just parts in. If I want to get a pristine version of that seed, I have one. I'll put that at the bottom too. Organizing your scene is really important. Currently, I'm working on a project where the subject I'm working on has over 200 parts, so you have to be really kind of diligent about naming everything correctly and managing your scene correctly. Otherwise, it gets out of hand. Okay, LTSTR. Light Striker, I guess, is asking me, where did I get this idea from? Can you clarify? I mean, like the idea of the car, or which specific idea are you referring to? Another thing I can also do is maybe I can have the driver be reclining a bit too. So what I'm going to do here is mask this part, and maybe I'll choose a mask lasso here for that. So yeah, the idea is again the I'm kind of trying to understand what you mean by where I got the idea of what the car or the the seating, or which specific idea were you mentioning? All right, so here what I want to do is I want to blur the mask, and you can do it by clicking on it, but it's kind of hard to do with a tablet, so I'm just going to go ahead and here click on blur mask. Move this gizmo to where the bending would happen, which would be about here where the spinal cord is, or the spine is, sorry, not the spinal cord. And let's bring everything back. The car and the chair, actually we don't need the car. And what I could do is I could recline the guy a little bit more this way. So they're a little bit reclined, but now the arms are up, so I need to fix that. And to do that, I will just pick the arms, which is going to be kind of an adventure to do it on two drivers. There isn't going to be two drivers, of course, it's just going to be one person. Let me turn symmetry on here. It's just going to be one person driving, but the passenger, there will be a passenger seat as well. So I have to, that's why I have two drivers sitting there. The future car is, well, it comes from the movie Blade Runner. So one of the things that, that when I was growing up, one of the big deals was that in the future we were going to have flying cars. So if you watch the Jetsons and a lot of shows, the future was going to have flying cars, and that was kind of the thing. And when they made Blade Runner, when they made that movie, they basically, said, well, it's the future, so why can't we have flying cars? And then they asked Sid Mead, who is the most amazing concept designer ever, to design a flying car, and that's what he designed. So if you are interested in seeing kind of the ideas and where we got kind of some of our references from, you should watch last week's episode, or 2 weeks ago, the season, episode 1 of season 2, and in that we basically went through and I talked about what the concepts are. So what I'll do here is I'm loading it. What I'll do is I'll show you the kind of the reference board that I have for this, and you can get an idea of like what my inspiration is for this. All right, I think that loaded, so I'll bring it in. So basically this is PureRef, which is a really nice reference gathering tool. And in it, you can see the different references. So these are all the sketches and drawings from Sid Mead. So these two are Sid Mead paintings, actually, gouache paintings, and these ones on top here are drawings, sketches, and this is the actual model they built for the movie. And currently there's a exhibit at the Peterson Museum, and they actually have these cars there. You can go see them. And here's the new spinner at the Peterson, and here is George Hull's designs and paintings of it. And they're really, this painting is really, really beautiful. It's just a really spectacular job he did on this one. And in the new one, they have some other spinners. And then I also went online and saw there were plenty of artists that had some ideas that they did for spinners, so I got a bunch of those as well. And the images that you see on the promotional parts, these ones right here, I'll just bring this up for a second. This image, this was a spinner that I designed a while back, and I did that in Zbrush, so we're going to just do a new one. They're fun to do. Doing future cars and flying cars are always a fun endeavor. All right, so we're going to rotate the arms down at this point so that he is driving correctly. So notice here, even though this is 3D scan data, we can use it to, we can kind of tweak it just a little bit, not a lot, but we can tweak it just a little bit to kind of work. And if I wanted to actually tweak this even more, I would have to retopologize it. And what happened, I think, I don't know, yeah, I think it's from the arms. I think there was a part of the head that was not masked, so that kind of moved forward too. So I'm going to do that all over again, kind of really quick. Okay, so that's going to be, the drivers are going to be sitting in these chairs. The seat looks good. Everything looks kind of the way I want it to. So that's going to be the interior of the car. And we're going to build that. We're going to build the interior as well as the exterior. So, but today we're just going to work on the interior. But before we do that, it's a good idea to know where people are sitting, so you know where the doors will open and all that good stuff. All right, so we got some room in this car, so I'm assuming this is going to be the cockpit area over here, so that's where they're going to be sitting. And there's a lot of room in the back here where there would probably be some sort of an engine. And maybe we can put one of those drones that flies out, or we can put some other things in there as well. So we'll probably do that next. All right, so let's go back to the body of the model, and I have it on transparency, and maybe I'll turn ghost off so I can kind of see where the people are. And that's always a good idea, because you have to kind of make sure that they can see out the windshield correctly, and that they are positioned in such a way where they can, you know, that this car kind of can work as the real thing. Their heads, now that I kind of did the reclining and everything like that, they're not at the center point. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move both of these parts together to kind of position them again. And to do that, what I'm going to do is mask the whole car. So let me just go back to just mask pen, mask the whole car, and then what I'm going to do is to move the other two. I'm going to turn this on, which is fondly referred to as the pizza boxes, and I guess the drivers are still masked, so I'll unmask those, go back to the car, and what I'll do is, yeah, these things here are called the pizza boxes, and if you click on that, they turn on, and when they turn on, you basically, I guess there's some of the masking going on with the seats too. Let me undo that as well. So now I'm basically moving the whole, everything else except whatever's masked. So again, I want to just bring the head to kind of the topmost part here. All right, so they're looking like they're pretty much in the front of the car. Their feet are sticking out, so I need to kind of move them up maybe a little bit, so their feet are not sticking out. And if you look at the Blade Runner cars, so here in the reference, I'll bring that back. I did look at the interior of this car, so I do have a shot here that is the interior, right? So this is the one from the current movie, and so they had a full-on interior in there, which looks pretty neat, right? They've got this monitor, and you know, so we'll look at these. But as you can see, this is where the feet go, right here, and it's pretty much in the front of the car. So if we look back at the car, let's see if I have a front shot of it. I do have one, but it's not in my reference. Well, I do. Oh, here we go. It's this one. Okay, so if you can see here, those feet are going to be pretty much up against this front part right here, right? So, I don't, in George Hall's design, in this one, it looks really nice, but it doesn't give us much data about what this looks like. I guess maybe it does a little bit here. No. Yeah, and this one doesn't really give us much information, but I really, from a design perspective, I really don't like what's going on here. This like transition from these pylons or wheels that are in the front to the front of the car, it's just very abrupt. And that same design here in Sid Mead's image, you can see that he's kind of done a better job of kind of creating that scoop, more interesting design of kind of these two pylons coming out this way. And let me see if I can see it from the top. I think you can see it here too. Yeah, this part right here, to me, looks a lot more interesting visually than what they have going on right here. Okay, so we're going to try and keep some of the better design choices in the spinner and do that. So here, notice I've got a little bit of a kind of an angle, and I'll be working on that some more. All right, so the people kind of are going to be here. We're done with that. Let's see how much. So their feet are over here. That's fine too. There's a little bit of room, and yeah, I think that's where they're going to sit. And this whole back part here is where the engine and other things would go. All right, so now that we've established that, let's go back to our model here, turn off the pizza boxes, and start sculpting on it. Now this is a little bit of a darker shading here, so maybe I'll pick a lighter color for this so we can see it better, but I do want a little bit more color. So maybe that. And the light is kind of going that way, so maybe I'll do a little bit of lighting here just to add one more light from the other side. So I've got a key light happening, and let's go ahead and add another light, a fill light maybe over here. And so we have 0.85 and 0.3. I think that's good enough. All right, so my lighting is good. We'll go ahead and start sculpting on this. So again, I'm going to use the move brush here. Again, we're just going for a gesture, and I'll unmask the car, and we're just kind of trying to get an interesting gesture here. Again, just working, getting those primary forms to work. If we get those right, the rest kind of works really well. And maybe kind of have a little bit of a, I like this kind of scoop on the side. It's pretty neat. And I kind of like the raised front part over here. Kind of it is an interesting thing. One of the really, very powerful design choices is this design choice right here. So it's circular over here, and then this kind of comes in. These two lines comes in this way, and George Hall has done a version of that that's very, very beautiful as well. So again, a circle on one side and these two coming in. So since both of them did that, I'm going to try and see if I can come up with something more interesting, and if not, I will also follow that design choice. And you can see here mine is kind of doing something a little bit different, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and store a morph target so I can get back to this earlier, and then I will try some new design choices. So now that I've got that morph target, I can start. Let's turn symmetry on. Did I not have symmetry on? Yeah. All right. Let's go all the way to where I unmasked it and make sure symmetry is on, and then store morph target here. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to try and see if I can, I have my version of this, and then I'll go ahead and do the type of sort of the version they have going on. The reason why I like to use Zbrush as a design tool is because I can do things like this, which are, I don't know how you would do that with pencil and paper. I mean, I can, of course, mask this whole back part here and use the clip circle center and maybe mask a little bit more and get that circular shape in the front like so. And then just kind of soften these edges. I guess I could turn Sculptress mode on just so I have a more destructive. Oh, it kind of gave me error. I guess maybe, yeah, I'll just keep it this way. And I can have subdivision levels on this. It's been a couple of weeks, so I forgot if I do. Let's see if I do. Geometry, I do have 4 subdivision levels, so let's reduce this a little bit to here. Actually, let's just keep it at 4. That's fine. And I'll use the planar brush just to kind of break up some of this chatter. So I've got that perfect circular shape over here, and maybe get that shape this way over here, and do that on top as well. So I basically have these two extremes. I've got this one, which is very similar to what they have, like so. Guess I should move this over this way. All right, so I've got this as one shape, and then I've got the morph target stored for the other one, and hopefully it is still there. So I can switch between the two, and what's nice is I can kind of go between the two. I can look at different levels. So I like the, there's this form, and then there's this form, and I can kind of even continue to go the other way, see if anything interesting happens there. So I don't know. What do you guys think? Is there a way to work on lower subdivision while viewing the higher? No, I don't. Well, I mean, if I were to do that, if I were to solve that problem, Ramses, what I would do is I would duplicate the object, and I would work on lower subdivision level on one while I look at the higher subdivision of the other. But no, basically you're working on subdivision level you're on. So here I'm kind of still continuing to do this and switching between the two. Right. Kind of trying to see, let's see if it looks any better from the front. I kind of like this idea that I had, so I'm just going to delete the morph target, the other morph target, and I think we're just going to kind of go off of this. I think I'm just going to do something new, and maybe I can utilize this top space over here to put some sort of a radar object or some sort of sensor, or maybe even a gun or something like that. So let's just kind of keep that. All right, and then let me just go back to the move brush here and start pushing and pulling the shape. I'm going to store another morph target just to kind of have the starting point. And then I kind of like the way this is going over here. Maybe lift up this just a tad, like so. And do this. So you can kind of see that you can really, just with a few kind of keystrokes, a few mouse strokes, tablet strokes. I'm actually using a Wacom tablet, which is, some people like to use Cintiqs with ZBrush, and Cintiqs are great as well. I don't have one, so I will use just a regular Intuos Pro, which I've been using for over maybe 15 years, different versions of them. So I kind of took a chance here and kind of created a straight line in the back. Let's see if I can get rid of that little bit of a hump. All right, somebody's asking, is it easier with ZBrush than other programs like Max 2 in your opinion? Is what easier? Supernova is this thing that I'm doing here. I mean, doing this in Max is a pain in the butt. I would not want to do this in Max or Maya or any other program. I think this is really kind of unique. Maya does have some sculpting tools in it now. I think that they brought over from Mudbox, but they are so much weaker than what Zbrush can do. I mean, if I'm at a client and they don't have Zbrush, I might use them, but for the most part, I usually like to do these kinds of things in Zbrush because it's really difficult. Yeah, modeling. Yeah, no, I model in Zbrush. The current project I'm on, I'm using Zbrush for it, and it's really kind of the amount of time I spend to do the things that I do is so much less than doing it in Maya or other programs. I still use Maya for some things. I think for retopology I use Maya, and I use Maya for some modeling tasks that Zbrush can't do. But since ZModeler came out, I think Zbrush has kind of been doing a big majority of what I need done. All right, I'm kind of experimenting here in the back. I'm going to go ahead and actually hide the. I'm just going to go to solo here and not look at the people. I think they're good where they are. I know where they are now, so I'm going to hide them. ZModeler hype. Thunder Bunny, have you not used ZModeler, or you're frustrated with it? It's one of those things where when you start using it, when you first start using it, it looks like there's a lot going on. So like, you hit spacebar and you're like, what is all this stuff? And then it's a whole other menu if you go to edges and you go to, oh, you love me, ZModeler. Okay, cool, yeah. But yeah, if you're just, if you're new to ZModeler, if you understand some of the concepts, it might be easy. But yeah, it's definitely changed the whole modeling paradigm for me. What cracks me up is like I was at a client, as I mentioned to you, and they had ZBrush 2018, and just like some of the features in the new one in 2019, I really like folders. I really needed folders, so I made them upgrade. Luckily, it's a free upgrade, so they didn't have to pay. Their IT guy was really super, super cool and nice, and he helped me do it. All right, so test dummy 011. Trying to learn how to model with ZBrush. I've worked more with CAD-based modelers, but I really want to learn ZBrush. Yeah, I've been working with CAD-based modelers too. Recently, I've been trying out Fusion 360 again. I like Moy, but there's quite a few. I'm trying to learn Alias just because I'm working a lot with automotive companies and they all know Alias. So if I know how to use Alias, I can kind of speak their language. But it's like just to do simple things, it's such a pain in the ass. I don't know how they do it. But that's what they learn in school. All right, I'm kind of liking this back scoop here. So notice here, I'm just kind of out of the primary forms. I'm trying to pull out some secondary forms and trying to get it to look, the way I want it to look. And those few cut lines that I drew on there are helping me. I don't want them to really define the shape, but they're at this point helping me do some of the tasks. So that looks okay over there. So you can see here I'm very slowly kind of starting to, and I'm working on level 4. I could probably bump this down one subdivision level and still be okay. So right now I'm on level 4. I can go to 3. I mean, it's a little bit more pixelated, but it's good for kind of defining your secondary shapes. I'm just going to jump back to 4. I think that was good. And I have to like not get drawn into working on one part for too long. I want to keep jumping around. I kind of like this faceted look, and I actually created a whole spinner that had that faceted look. I wonder if I still have it here. I don't, not in this scene. But I created a spinner that's all these faceted parts, and that was kind of interesting too. And I actually built a story around that. So if you go to my Instagram, and if you guys aren't following me on Instagram, you should follow me on Instagram. Definitely. So I'll go there right now and show you where it is. So my Instagram handle is Kermaco, so Kermaco. And so Instagram.com/Kermaco, Kermaco. And here you can see this was me at the Peterson. So this is me next to that car. And here's the spinner that that I worked on before, and this is the robot we did in the past episodes of the Zbrush Live. So I think I did this in about 9 episodes, 9 2-hour episodes. And there's a bunch of things. This is a new thing I'm going to be selling very soon. It's almost done. I just want to putting the finishing touches on it and creating some kind of promotional material for it. But it's basically going to be an insert mesh brush that you can use for bullet chains. And here's that robot again, a lot of renders of it. But the reason why I'm bringing this whole thing up is because I did another spinner that I wanted to use ZBrush's new non-photorealistic rendering capabilities. And so I basically was making a Blade Runner kind of comic. So this is what it looked like. So really, really simple shapes. And so this was kind of my second version, and I thought that people would look faceted as well. So I made some drivers for it standing around. And then I basically start to make a story. So here's the first plate of the story. Here's the spinner flying on top of the city. And then this is the second plate where it's going towards the building. And the third one is where the spinner is kind of coming in to park on top of the building. Right? So this is kind of a neat thing you can do with ZBrush too, is you can kind of take your images and render them, or take your models and render them in this non-photorealistic way to get things that look like comics, right? Or graphic novels. So here's another view of it kind of from the side. So yeah, definitely follow me on Instagram if you don't. All right, let's see. I've been doing hard surface modeling in ZBrush since I learned how to use ZModeler. Yeah, yeah. A lot of people say, well, like people with with a very authoritative voice say, well, ZBrush is really great for organic modeling, but for hard surface, it's not. And they say that with like the utmost confidence, right? And it's true. ZBrush is really amazing for organic modeling, and there's some people that just make amazing stuff on it every day on ZBrush Central. But I also think that it is just as capable of doing hard surface stuff. And there aren't that many hard surface modelers with ZBrush, but that number is growing. There's a few that are doing amazing work. And hopefully there will be as many hard surface models as there are organic models in ZBrush. So I'm kind of really liking this shape here. This shape language is really working for me. So I'm going to continue doing that. And it's opening up this nice area over here where I can have a interesting shaped drone that kind of flies off of the car. And I'm also liking this shape over here. So I'm going to go ahead and keep it as kind of the trunk shape. And again, you see some faceting, but it's not that bad. All right, let's see, any questions? No. All right, cool. So is it hot where you guys are? It's really hot in LA. Today was a super, super hot day. I'm going to have to, when I do the rendering, it's, it really, heats up the machine, the computer. So hopefully when I do the rendering part of this, it'll have cooled off, it'll be cooled off a bit. So we're going to continue doing this until October, right? So this it's going to be 8 episodes. So we started last month, September, I'm sorry, not September, but we started, I think, in July, and so we're gonna do August, September, and October. So it should have cooled. It should be cooled down by October. Thunder Bunny, you're saying it was hot here. Where's here? Are you in Europe? I know in Europe it's been super, super hot. New York is super hot too. East Coast. All right. Oh, in DC. Oh, yeah. Yep. We're not in the thick of summer yet. I mean, I wonder if August and September are going to be just super horrible. All right. So I'm kind of trying to pull these shapes and kind of get... This is looking good. I'm kind of liking the design of this. So now I'm going to kind of, see, I've been working on the back for a while. I need to get off of that and move on to another section. So now I'm going to be working here in the front. And you guys can see everything okay. If you can't, if you have questions, let me know. Yeah. I think the question Thunder Bunny's asking, if I'm roughing out a model like this, am I just looking for interesting shapes? I am. I constantly, I have my reference up, so my reference is on my other screen, and I constantly, if I'm looking over, I look at the reference too, because I might as well, right? I'll find interesting things in the reference, and the reference that I have here is very much spinners and cars, but it could be anything, right? So I try to get inspiration from all sorts of things. Try to not limit myself to my subject matter and go outside of it. I hope that answered your question. Jay, are you still on? If you are, how's it going? All right, at some point here, I also go to the Damien Standard brush. Oh, there's somebody from Armenia watching. That's pretty wild. Sometimes I switch to the Damien Standard brush and try to kind of maybe draw some shapes on there. Sometimes I do that with the Damien Standard brush, and sometimes I just paint, right? So it's also nice to kind of go to the paint tool here, and you can pick a different color. So you can fill this object with whatever color you're on, and then maybe go to a darker color and then start painting on your model, so you can start drawing your ideas out. So earlier we talked about how this would be a good place for the drone. So instead of sculpting that, I'll start drawing it. So maybe there'll be a drone right here, like so, and I kind of start thinking about what the shape of it would be. So maybe it would be something like this, and it would fly out, and maybe it would have wings pop out. Although wings don't seem to be a thing in this universe. I don't think I've seen anything with wings in the Blade Runner universe. By the way, if you're a Blade Runner fan, or if you've watched the movie, we kind of was a sad week this week because Rutger Hauer passed away, and he was amazing in that movie. All right, so I'm kind of trying to see if there's like a back part. So I'm just basically drawing on the model here, just trying to get some ideas, and then maybe the canopy would be like this. Right, and it's also good to maybe fill in the glass part to kind of see how it contrasts with the rest of the model. So I can just do this. So your model is just a canvas now, right? I don't know if you can do this kind of stuff in CAD. I definitely think you can. So that's a piece of glass, and this is a piece of glass right here as well. So this kind of shows you the contrast of the glass to the actual metallic parts of the body, right? And then this bottom part is glass too, because if you're flying in a car, you have to see underneath you. So I have to figure out a good frame here for the metal parts, and then this part will be glass all the way down to here. And both George Hall's car and Sid Mead's car have glass on the bottom. You can actually see it in the movie. So maybe something interesting like this. And this is a good idea to, at this point, bring up the drivers again to see, like, you know, what part. I guess you don't need this much glass over here. So I'm just going to maybe not be so ambitious with the bottom part of this. Maybe this is enough. You know, they can just look down and see. Maybe a little bit more this way. There we go. Right, so when you're doing concept design or industrial design, you're always having to consider things being real, right? I have a friend of mine who works as a set designer, and he builds these things for movies, and he always tells me that they get concepts that are impossible to build, impossible to you know, to build, and also to so see here, like the guy has to get out of the car, so how's that going to work, right? He needs to have, you know, the window needs to kind of have some sort of a feature where it opens up, so I have to kind of engineer and design that and figure out how it does its thing, right? So maybe this part kind of lifts up, right? So this part opens up, you know, kind of forward, so that's kind of a new thing we can introduce. So there'd be hinges here and or hinges over here, and this thing would open up, and then the doors would open up this way. So I have to figure out kind of what the side doors and windows look like too over here. So again, I'm not really sculpting at this point, I'm just painting on the surface of the model to just kind of solve concept design problems. And, you know, I can get a really good idea, like if this car was this far away, I could kind of see how the features would work. And it's working for me. I think sometimes you get really lucky and your concept starts working early on. And I think we're in one of those situations. And again, these are just basically rough markers of where things would go. Right. Okay. All right, so is Deckard a replicant? Yeah, he is. I think they established that in the second movie, and I think Ridley Scott is on record saying that he is a replicant. Not only is he a replicant, but he's a replicant that can have a baby replicant. How about that? And I think they're talking about making a third movie, which will be great. Maybe they'll see this and hire me to do the spinner for it. Ridley Scott, if you're watching, it'll be my honor to do it. Right? So if anybody knows him, let him know. All right, well, maybe I won't have the drone be here. Maybe I'll have this back part here be glass too. Let's see how that works out. So he can look behind. I mean, I'm sure these things would have like super cameras on there. How funny would it be if they did contact me, like from this? Stranger things have happened. Okay, so now that I've got this design, I'm kind of not happy with what's going on here, right? So this kind of shape language that I had over here, I'm not happy with. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my poly paint. kind of a brighter color. And I thought, why am I still seeing the poly paint? All right. Oh, that's why. All right. I'm on this swatch. That's why. All right. So let me go back to that darker color over here and switch this and make this a lighter color. All right. So this design over here that I kind of liked. I like it from the top still, but from the side I'm kind of not feeling it. So here I can go back and start. Oops. Problem solving this area. All right. So here I'm kind of getting those wobbles, right? So I'm just going to drop down my subdivision levels to maybe 2, maybe even 1, and try to fix that kind of here. Like, ugh. Yeah, it's going to be really kind of hard to do this and keep that really cool shape that I had in the back. But maybe I'll leave that as is. Excuse me for a sec. Maybe I'll leave that as is, and then maybe I'll add parts on top of that to, yeah, maybe let's see if I can do that. So I'll just leave that the way it was, like this. We go back. This is the other thing I like about ZBrush is you can go back in time very easily. All right, so let's just leave it like this, and then maybe I'll add some other parts in here which will fix it. All right. Let's bring back our poly paint and see if we can do some more painting on this. Should pick the paintbrush. All right. Let me do a minor adjustment here. There we go. Trying to get the camera to be. There we go. Where did you get sketch lines? Azzy Sky? You're asking about where I got sketching, the painting, you mean? Is that what you're asking? Here, let me pick this as the other color. Are you asking about that, or are you asking about where I got the sculpting lines? What if I have this part be glass too? Yep, I think I'm going to do that. Let's see, if I'm inside the car, would I see out that way? Yeah, I would. What I like about VR is you can actually be in the car like that you're designing. You can't really do, I mean, you can do that kind of somewhat in ZBrush, but it's not as realistic as VR is. I've been doing quite a bit of designing in VR lately too, and like it. Line stroke, cage under people. Oh, you mean this thing? This thing right here? This one? Azzy, are you talking about this? I don't know if YouTube has a delay, so I'll wait a couple of seconds for him to get back to me. Good opportunity to drink some water. Oh, yeah, this thing, I got it from Gravity Sketch. So Gravity Sketch comes with some models in it, and this is one of them. So I just brought it in from Gravity Sketch. It is a VR application. I could have just as easily have modeled that myself, or I could have also brought it in from some other program. But when I was using Gravity Sketch, I saw it. I'm like, I'm going to try and use this in something, and this is that thing. Kind of like this little angle over here. I'm going to leave it there, but I have to figure out how the glass would work with it. If I do it flat, it's just going to be boring. So maybe I'll do this. Here we go. All right. All right, so it has kind of an interesting glass aspect to it. So I don't know if one piece of glass could be built to do all this. So let me see where I'm going to put the door frame. Hello, Nikki. Hello. Happy that you joined us. So again, all these are going to be recorded. So if you miss something, you can go back and watch it. And I think they have them, they continue to keep them on Twitch and YouTube, and I think Facebook, like all three places. I think you can go and watch them. But the good thing about watching live is that you get to ask questions and you get to interact, which is kind of fun. Because I could be recording this and putting it out, but I really like streaming because it kind of puts me on the spot, gets me working fast. It's good practice, and it's a good way to kind of connect with people. So now I'm just kind of trying to figure out some interesting kind of shapes for this glass piece. So I don't know if this would be more interesting like this, or if I actually had the glass kind of cover this area. All right, can everybody hear me okay still? Everything is good sound-wise? Audio is good? As Zbrush is saving the yeah, I don't like bosses that look over my shoulder. That's like my least favorite thing. I don't know how people can be creative with bosses looking over their shoulder. All the best bosses I've had have determined what I can do early on and just let me do my thing. If somebody's editing me too much, then they should not be paying for me. They should be doing the work themselves. But you never know. I work with difficult people just like everybody else. Not at the job I'm on now, though. Like the nicest people. All right, so, okay, this is kind of looking promising. All right, so that's good. And then let's look at some other features we can add. So maybe figure out maybe some cut lines for where the trunk would be. Did I mess up my color? Nope, I still have it. Yep. Um, yeah, Gravity Sketches is nice. I mean, it's got a lot of promise. I don't know though. The thing with VR is I can only spend so much time in VR before I'm like, okay, I need to be doing something else. I think a lot of the VR art programs, a lot of the people that are making them kind of are trying to do new paradigms. So some of the things are similar. Like it took forever for Medium to have a move tool. And now that it does, it's like so much more effective. But I can't imagine why you'd even start without one of those. All right, I'm trying to see if this kind of back design is going to work for some sort of a light or a trunk or something in the back. Hey Pablo, how's it going? Glad you could join us. Sometimes if I'm kind of having difficulty at this part, I photo bash it. But this today, I don't know. It's like sometimes things work all the time and sometimes they don't. Today is one of those days things are working pretty nicely. All right, so I think we've got enough kind of glass on there for now. So let's switch back. Kind of like this little inlet that I made over here. As you can see, I'm running out of resolution. If I get closer and I want to add more detail, I can't because I'm at subdivision level 4 and I only have so much. This is poly painting, so I'm actually painting the polygons, and if I don't have too many polygons then I don't have as much. I can subdivide it more to get more refined shapes, but actually I'm trying not to because I want to keep it loose still, because today we're just kind of trying to determine this outside shape. And all right, so I think that's good. Let's see what we can do with this front part. So the reason why these two things exist over here, the kind of the logic behind it, when Sid Mead was designing his spinner, was that he said, okay, well, a car will fly, but it's not going to fly all the time, right? It's going to still land and drive. So it's got to have, I'm trying to make PureRef's image kind of fit the screen here. Whoops. Let's get that back. So, he was saying the car would fly, right? So this thing would fly. And then, so he basically kind of said that, okay, the jets would be over here somewhere, and then this whole thing would turn. So you can kind of see it more. So these would be kind of lights and something that would emit the jet power, and then these would turn, and then they would drive on the road, right? So I think here's kind of a better version of that, where there are wheels and tires underneath this, and then this whole thing will turn around. So you can see here, this part over here is where the tires would be, and then so he definitely gave it a lot of. So I think this is basically a really good version of it right here. So this whole thing would kind of turn and open up, and then the tires would come out. And I guess BF Goodrich is still a thing in the future, so he's got BF Goodrich tires. This is a CG mock-up. This is not his drawing, of course, but that's kind of the idea, is that the this flying part would open up and then the wheels would come down, and that's why there is that part. And the reason why there isn't anything here is because this is usually where the engine would go, but if you have a flying car, then there doesn't have to be an engine there. It could be anywhere, right? And we don't really know what kind of materials make this thing fly, but we can't go by the existing kind of ideas that we have. And even if you look at a Tesla, you can see that the design of a Tesla, the design of where things are completely different than a traditional car. So I think Teslas are really kind of paving the way to a future way of driving, or future way of transportation. And I think a lot of car companies will follow suit after that. All right, so I'm still playing around here where I need to be doing stuff over here. All right, so we have to figure out where are the tires stored and how will they come out. So in the new one, they just basically are there. There's no turning of this at all. It's just, they're over here like this. Right, this is where the tires would be. Trying to land a circle. Right, this is where the tires would be in here, and then they would and there would be some sort of a device like this, and then they would come down. Right, they would come down into the from here. So I don't know if I want to follow that way of doing it, or if I want to have like some sort of a mechanism here that turns around. So I'm going to explore that, see if I can come up with something. All right. Anybody have any questions or any observations? Anything kind of you want to talk about? It's kind of hard to be doing this just by myself, so if you guys can help out with some conversation, that would be great. All right. So I'm just kind of assuming that there's kind of some sort of a connection here. And if there is a connection, if this would turn in. And we can test that out. So I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to drop down to level 1. I'm going to mask out this area. Let me just switch to a mask lasso here. Right, and just kind of select this part and invert the mask, and let's go ahead and take a look and see like what this would look like if these things turned. Right, so suppose they turn like this to fly, and then they go back like this to drive. What if they turn from up here? So now I'm basically, again, doing concept design. I'm basically figuring out, okay, like how would this thing work? Maybe it would go like this. Wow, that twisted things up quite a bit now, didn't it? All right, maybe not up so high. Let's just put it in the middle. So here I'm just kind of looking for ideas of how, if this would turn, if there would be any visual interest in that, or if it would be a cool thing, or if we should just leave it the way it is. I can also choose to see this is a good way to kind of see if this was shorter. Like in Sid Mead's version, it's a bit shorter. I kind of like it the way it was. Yeah, you could definitely sketch on a model. That's like one of the coolest things you could do in Zbrush. So you can start drawing and sketching on your sculpture early on. It's one of the kind of the cooler aspects of polypaint. Longer? No. I think the way I had it was okay. I'm kind of still thinking about whether or not this turning bit would be interesting. I kind of like this. Oh, look at that. Make this part lower and then have like a bottom part over here. Yep. This is definitely working better for me right here. So I'm going to actually keep that design choice. Happy accident there. Oh yeah, that is totally cool. Scooped up, scooped forward this way. I am digging that quite a bit. All right, so that kind of brought this part in, so to figure that out. All right, let's go back up in subdivision levels and see how this looks. I don't want it to look too much like lobster claws, so I'm kind of trying to see it is a flying car. It definitely is that. Sparky Face 5, I'm modeling a flying car, a spinner. We're going to be modeling the same thing for all the episodes. We're just developing it further and further and further. So last time we kind of started out picking a bunch of different shapes, and then we landed on this one. Today what we did is we actually put some people into the car. So there are actually people in here, which you can see. And we also picked kind of the seating area for the car as well. And now we're just kind of working on the body, getting it from primary shapes all the way down to secondary shapes. So one of the things to do here, which I always like to do, is kind of check out the silhouette. So if I'm looking at this car, let's say from this far, is it still interesting looking? And yeah, I mean, it seems to be, I could tell it's a spinner from this distance. I don't know if it's compelling at this distance. I don't know if there's anything about it that would stick out. But, I can see kind of the glass parts here. Those look really good. And so I could definitely, even from this distance, I can tell where the driver would be. So it is kind of, it does read well from that distance. All right. Cool. Okay, so I think I'm okay with this, and now I'm going to start going back to Paint, start drawing some features in this front part that could be of interest. So what would be in here? So this would we could house a tire in here. That's fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and rough out a circular shape for a tire, and and let's look at it from the bottom. And let's say that tire would take up this space over here, like so. Nope. Maybe it would be here. So this is where that tire would be. Maybe I should choose a different color for that. So I'm just going to jump to like some weird color over here. Let's just pick yellow. And let's say this is where the tires would go. Again, I'm not going to keep any of this paint, so none of this paint is going to stay. It's just there for me to kind of know where things are. So the darker parts are kind of where the glass is, and then maybe this would be, my idea of where the tires would be. Let's draw a quick circle here. Like so. So this would be kind of where the tire would go, right here. So when it lands on the ground and needs to actually drive, this is where that would be. All right, so we got some room on top here, so we can kind of start thinking about, we can put some lights, we can put maybe some guns over here, why not? So let's just change the color again to, this time let's go to red or orange and put some dots there to where we could have like maybe, they did have guns in the new Blade Runner, the spinner, K spinner, did have guns on it. So that is a thing. No. Let's not put guns there. Maybe we'll just have lights. Let's switch back to yellow. Maybe there could be some lights over here like that. And maybe these over here would be lights too. Have some lights on the bottom. So you can see kind of how my forms are starting to come together. Even before I sculpt anything, I'm kind of doing the design. I can get buy-off on the stuff from art directors, or I can decide whether or not things are working or not working pretty early in the game. All right, so at this point, we've got about another half an hour to go. So I want to decide what I'm going to do in that half an hour. I can continue to do what I'm doing. The bottom looks pretty boring. I mean, the thing about these cars is, like, if it was any other car, you wouldn't really worry about the bottom, but since these things are flying, you are going to see them from the bottom. So we got to think up some interesting things to do over in this area. So I'm going to go back to this color, maybe pick a little bit of a different one, and start thinking about what I want to do here in the bottom. A lot of my students ask me, is drawing still relevant? And I tell them it absolutely is, because here I'm drawing on a 3D object. And by the way, I can use lazy mouse. Maybe I should do that. And instead of trying to land these lines, I can just use lazy mouse to land some straighter lines. Yeah, I don't know if it's hydraulic. See, that's the thing. There is no real flying car, so you kind of have to. Well, there are cars that are using propellers. And I can kit bash. I can add some kit bash parts down here, but I'm just kind of trying to figure out some interesting shapes. So if I'm looking at this thing like it's coming at me like that, I'd have some interesting things to see underneath. So this is just kind of rough concepting. I'm going to turn lazy mouse back down to 1. Maybe I won't follow this shape that I have underneath and maybe try some other shapes. Yeah, you can see how this is very exploratory. And it's important to do this kind of stuff before you start committing to spending a lot of time sculpting things, and then you're done, and they don't really suit what you wanted to do. So this way we can kind of make all our mistakes and find our happy accidents earlier on. Yeah, I don't know. I think cars are going through quite a bit of a revolution right now. I think electric cars are a big deal. I think zero emissions is a big mission for everybody. So electric cars are kind of a thing, and so are intelligence built into cars. So before when there was a newer version of your car, maybe it looked a little bit different, or it had a few things here and there. But nowadays, like, there's so many features in every generation of a car that like my wife's car has a camera that you can see, and you're backing up, you can see what's going on. My car does not. My car has a beeping sound. And then, my previous car didn't even have that. So, it's really interesting how fast, computers and, you know, and just smartness, I guess, smart aspects are making cars completely different from generation to generation. My wife's car has Bluetooth, mine does not. So I have to actually connect my phone with a wire to listen to music. My car has a CD player. I have not used it for the last, 6 years, 7 years. All right. It's going to make it easier for the government to track me and know what I'm doing. Maybe. I don't know. I always want to assume that whatever technology comes out, that people will use it for good reasons, but All right, I'm spending too much time here going back and forth on this, so that's a good time to kind of leave that. And again, notice that it's just completely flat, so it's really not adding any visual interest. But later on, I'll just pop some kit bash parts in here and create some visual interest. But, this kind of shape maybe would be an interesting one to have. I'm kind of liking separating these side pockets out somehow on their own. And they would kind of maybe contain some sort of anti-magnetic or something, anti-gravity components that will make the car fly. One of the things that I thought was really interesting in the new Blade Runner is that the car banked. And you know what I mean? Do you guys know what I mean by banking? What I mean by banking is that it would do something like, here, let me center this. Turn symmetry off. So like it would do this to turn. Right? And that's what airplanes do. There's no reason for a car that's flying to bank. So I thought that was really funny that they did that. But they have to kind of relate to things in our world to make sense of them. God, this car has some really interesting angles. Like this sharp angle over here. Maybe I'll get rid of it. Let's see if it's any better if I do. Oh, that's too much. Yeah, that actually looks better. And what's nice is at any point in time I can just take all this paint away and just get back to what my model looked like before. Right? So this is all going to be stuff that I'm going to be working on soon. All right, so let me finish up these doors, and I think I'm going to be done with the painting. We're got about 20 minutes left with our time together, so I think I'm going to stick to just kind of doing what I've been doing and defining these aspects. And then next week, or not next week, but 2 weeks from now, what we'll do is we'll start separating these parts out, right? So because these are going to be separate parts, we might have a door open up. So I have to kind of figure out how this door would open. And again, we don't have to use any of the existing paradigms. We can, we can assume that there's going to be new technology, and we're also going to assume that if there's a car like this being made, maybe price factors are not going to be that big of an issue. All right. Altered carbon. Yeah. Altered carbon was interesting. Um, pl- Platino 82. It was interesting. They did have some interesting cars in that one too. Um, you would have an air intake if you had a jet, right? So if this was using jet technology, then it would definitely be a good idea to have an air intake. But I'm assuming that that's not what it's going to do. It's basically going to be using some sort of a anti-gravity method or something like that. There is actually a kind of technology of that out today, but I think you have to have certain temperatures and whatnot. So I don't know if I don't know if that's going to be something that could work. But we're just going off of what the Blade Runner world has, and we're assuming that, hey, if you have a flying car in the first Blade Runner and you have one in the next Blade Runner, that they've figured out some sort of material that will make the car levitate and fly, versus using propulsion or something like that. Because if you have jet propulsion, if you have something pushing it forward, then you actually need to have multiple ones that can kind of counterbalance each other, or you need to have wings so that it could rise above. It would have to be more aerodynamic than this. This is definitely, it is aerodynamic, but it's not airplane aerodynamic. I'm trying to figure out what to do with this back part, because I don't want these facets, but I do like some of the features that they are bringing in, but I don't want this whole part to be flat, so I have to figure out how to make this work. Nope. See, I kind of like that little bit of a wedge design, so I'm going to keep that. What just happened? Did I lose a bunch of stuff? No, I didn't. Okay, good. I did lose a little bit, I think, but it's fine. Sometimes if that happens, you basically, it's like a brick with 4 wheels. Yeah. I kind of like the way this is coming out, so I'm going to try and keep that feature, but I have to figure out how to work that. I think maybe I can flatten this out a bit down this way. I'll get something that I want. And I also like these kind of winglets over here. It reminds me of older cars. I might even exaggerate those later on with other pieces. All right, go to Damien Standard, start adding some kind of feature lines over here. So maybe this. It's kind of fun to be doing this after a full day of work. Just kind of playing versus being strictly on a production. Right, so I'm kind of figuring out some sort of a design for the light back here. And I'm going to switch back to paint and switch back to this color and fill that in, see how that works. And again, this color doesn't really matter. It's just a placeholder for Dodge Challenger Hellcat. don't know what that would look like. I should look it up. I will after the stream. I think there are people that actually make real cars, like real existing cars in ZBrush as well. All right. Yeah, that looks good. No, because it kind of makes the back of the car look droopy. Like it's, so I'm going to shoot back all the way to before I did that. It was an interesting idea, but I don't think I'm going to follow through with it. I'm just going to leave this as is. Maybe there'll be cut lines, but I still want these parts to be metal. All right, let's go ahead and I'm actually going to erase these lights over here completely. Yeah, maybe I'll try to raise these now. Let me try and do that, see if that's interesting. And we'll drop down subdivision levels, maybe to number 3. And let's lift these up. To get kind of that, I'm kind of digging this quite a bit. Yeah, this is working pretty nice. And let's see, it kind of has to look good from the front too. All right, I think I'm going to keep this feature. I like it. And it kind of solved a big problem for me, which is this shape. So I can just flatten that out like so. I can even bring this out a bit. See, now it looks like it's got cat ears. All right, let's pick some good angles here. That. All right, that solved that problem. I could put air scoops in here if I want to. And I kind of did that with my other spinner, like with the one that I made. Here, I'll bring it up. With the one that's in the picture, the previous spinner, this one right here. See, I added scoops to that one. I did add air scoops. So I wonder if they would have racing with these cars. That would be interesting, right? All right, let's just kind of see if I even push this further. No, it's too much. No, I think I've got an interesting kind of gesture going on here. I'm liking that. And all right. Okay, so we got about maybe another 15 minutes to go. Let's see, what can I do in those 15 minutes that I think we've kind of, the body shape is pretty much locked in. I think at this point we're just going to develop this further. I don't think I'm going to do much more design of the body itself. I think we've made some really good strides forward. today and the 2 hours we've had. I love 2 hours like this. Like, I love it when I spend 2 hours on something like this and I get something out of it that I'm happy with. Because there's so many times where you spend like maybe half a day or a whole day on something, and it's at the end of it, you just want to throw it against the wall and not do this again. But today we have been lucky. Again, using the Damien Standard brush. To kind of get some interesting cut lines. Maybe not. Maybe just leave this be. Oh, you'll see it. We're going to do it. That's the goal of this entire thing, is just to start with something and get all the way to the end. So by the end of October, we will have a fully rendered, finished model. One of the things people used to do is they used to put the steps of what they did on ZBrush Central, and that's how people found out how things worked. But I think these streams are a really nicer way of doing these things, because you get to watch the whole process. There's so many artists I wish I could watch their process. Sometimes they have tutorials, sometimes they don't. I'm working on a new tutorial for Gnomon. I can't really talk about it just yet, but we will be announcing it soon. And yes, it will be using ZBrush for sure. All right, I think I'm liking this. Let me drop a quick save real quick. And we got about 10 more minutes, and I'm just going to open it up for last questions. So start thinking about anything you want to ask about. And then we will kind of end this at 9 o'clock my time. I want to establish the planes of this front part. I think that would be a good project. It's really interesting to see the number of people that are watching this go up and down over time. Some people might be channel surfing and they'd be like, what the hell's going on here? Turn on some music. Ah. This music's going to put me to sleep. Let's see if there's something else. Here again, I'm just trying to find some interesting features. I should be doing this painting with painting. I will actually do it with painting. Let's go to about there. Okay, and then let's pick this color. Maybe I can figure out something to do with this inside part right here. Oh, it's not going to work. All right. I think all right, so now that we have all this paint, it's time to maybe turn off the poly paint and see what we have as kind of a overall shape, and start kind of looking at it from, just a form perspective without the other parts, and I think it is working. So like I said, we kind of got lucky today. We have a lot of this looking exactly the way we want it to look. So I think at this point, it's a good time to call it a day. All right, so if there are no other questions, I will bid you all a good night, and we will see you again in 2 weeks. All right, happy ZBrushing, everybody.